to welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning. My name is Tim Arnold, and I'm a digital learning coach with Keep Indiana Learning. Today, I'm here with fellow digital learning coaches, Nicole Nelson and Adam Hofer, for the latest episode of our book study series, Keep Indiana Reading, The Shift to Student-Led Edition. We'll be focusing today on Chapter 7 and Workflow Shift number 7, from feedback on finished products to feedback during the process. And before we dive in, let's do some introductions.
Hello, I'm Nicole Nelson. I'm from Lewis Cass Schools. This is my 24th year in education, my third year as the Technology Integration Specialist, where we are implementing UDL across our district. So this aligns perfectly with what we're doing. I hope to see some of our teachers as viewers. And this is my second year as a Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coach.
And hi, everyone. I'm excited to be joining in this book study this week. My name is Adam Hofer, and I've been a high school English teacher for the past 16 years with Franklin County Community Schools in Brookville, Indiana. And I also serve as a digital learning coach through Keep Indiana Learning with both Tim and Nicole. So I'm excited to be here on this episode to talk about UDL and its impacts with feedback.
And I'm Tim Arnold from Richmond Community Schools, kind of Adam's neighbor to the north. And I'm a 34-year public school educator, 26 years in the classroom, and 8 as a district e-learning specialist here in Richmond. Also a fellow Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coach and a HEC board member. So, guys, as we open this up, right off the bat in this chapter, they talk about people being open to feedback, and they actually start with teachers or educators being open to feedback. Talk a little bit about your impressions at the beginning of this chapter about that idea of all of us, not just our students, but all of us being open to feedback. How did that strike you?
Yeah, definitely. I started reading this and thought, like, even myself as a coach, getting feedback on, after a presentation, how did that go? Did you get what you expected out of it? And I like what I think it was Katie that referenced in the book. She said, as a learner, like, that's the most valuable piece of her job is getting the feedback to figure out what can I do better. So yeah, that definitely hit home.
Yeah, I agree. And there was something in there that, talked about how, like, students feel seen, like, through the learning process, like, also, like, helps me feel seen when I'm getting that feedback. When we get evaluations, it can be sometimes, like, pretty dry, but when we can get more in tune feedback from our students or from fellow staff members through a presentation, like, it helps me grow, and it may feel uncomfortable at times, but we know that that's an important part of the learning process. So yeah, I thought that was a great way to kind of look at feedback through the lens of, like, a teacher or as an adult.
I love that you used the word uncomfortable there, Adam. I think, we've all been in those situations as learners, as teachers, as coaches. And I think, but we all know, we can internalize that if it's not a little bit uncomfortable, we're probably not doing it right. We're not getting what we could get out of it. And so one of the things I pulled out of that opening section was, I think it was Katie Novak was talking about the idea of chat alerts during online synchronous instruction. And what she meant by that were these 2-minute breaks. Gives people, they know it's coming up so they can prepare for it. Gives them a chance to stretch or ask questions or post comments. And she kind of felt the awkwardness of sitting with a group of people just kind of look at each other during these breaks. And so she started adding some music. And then she added a timer to break up that awkwardness. And what I loved about that was this style of teaching, or this synchronous instruction, started out as hers. But because she listened to their feedback about how awkward that was, it became theirs. I think it's so important if we take those learning environments and move them from mine to yours or all of ours. And that's a very powerful statement on the possibilities of getting some good info through feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so, when you think about the whole, like, UDL structure, like, providing that space for students and adult learners to be a part of that conversation, to be building in that community, I think that pointed to that quite eloquently, for sure.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was kind of thinking about, there are 2 ways to kind of look at feedback, and one is, like, feedback on like from students on the learning environment or on like the experience, like how, like, did they get what they expected out of that experience? Was I doing what I needed to do? Or even like as a coach, like, are teachers getting what they need out of that experience? What can I do better? But also like providing them feedback in the moment so that they can make adjustments to what they need to in that moment. And so I was thinking as a coach, like, how can I model that? Because a lot of times the feedback that I get is, we didn't have enough time to get to practice anything. And I was thinking about that as I was reading the part in the book where she was talking about the students who were working on a math problem of some sort. And so there was time for the instruction piece, but then the point that we get to in instruction is often that point where, okay, students are going to work, and that's when they need the most help. That's when they need the most support. That's when they have the most questions and where we can have those conversations. But usually that's the point when, okay, we're done, and now you're going to take your work home with you. And that happens to me a lot too when I'm giving instruction to teachers about something. We get to the point where, okay, go try this in your classrooms. And that's when they need more help, or that's when they want the examples, or that's when I would like to be working with them more. So I'm now reconsidering, okay, what would that look like to model that as a coach for my teachers so that they're practicing that feedback in the moment.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think a lot of times, speaking from the presenter side, we have a set number of things we would like to get through or present to people with the time that we have. But, as well as I do, most presentations are 45 minutes or 50 minutes, or you're lucky to get an hour, sometimes much less. And so I think what I finally turned the corner on at the ripe young age of 55 is, you know what, I'm going to limit the number of things that I put in front of them, but I'm going to build in the time for reflection, whether it be just a chance to talk with your shoulder buddy and say, hey, how might I use this? Or to build in time to we've seen this, let's build one. Let's go ahead and try it. And, clearly I didn't come to that real fast in terms of being a presenter. I think I was much faster getting there when I was working with students, but adults need the same thing, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was a segment in there in that first part where it talked about, I won't say negatives, but maybe things to avoid with feedback. Avoid things that are infrequent, or focus on tiny little things that maybe don't really matter in the big picture, or feedback in isolation. Feedback only on finished products. I think I'll speak for every teacher out there who has collected those papers and put them in a bag, diligently carried them home and set them down beside my chair and looked at them a couple of times and, I really should. And then what good is that doing for my learners? And I've done that. So I really liked that they just brought that to the forefront in this opening section, because if you watched any of these others, one of the things I've talked about consistently is an EDU protocol called the Fast and Curious. And I love that because it tries to defeat each of those things we're trying to avoid. It is timely. It is actionable. It sends the message that the learning is not over. All of those things that we want students to know and experience. So I was really happy that they mentioned those things and didn't just gloss over them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. It felt like as a high school English teacher, like those stacks of papers that come rolling in, and and knowing that I want to provide that feedback, and then seeing it hit the recycling bin, and it's not timely typically. It takes the time as they talk about in the book. If we were to spend, I forget the exact amount of time, the 3 minutes times 100 students, whatever. So, I've definitely been there. So having that kind of personal connection of like that traditional workflow and how important it is to try to start to disrupt that a bit. And then, there's different ways you can try to do that. But that definitely felt like, that is a typical experience of all types of teachers. But maybe because I have that English kind of lens on, I feel like we get these essays and these responses and things that just kind of roll in, and how do we provide that feedback in a timely manner that's not just on the finished products?
Yeah, definitely. And the papers are the worst, right? They take the longest. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that too. One of the things that struck me was when you are in the moment providing feedback, you are validating that idea of, the posters that are in all of our rooms. Mistakes are proof that you're trying, and the growth mindset that we're trying to instill in our students. If we're only providing the feedback at the end and all they're really looking for is the grade, never mind the hours that we spent, highlighting and making notes on their papers, that if we're doing that in the moment, then we're kind of reinforcing that idea of the growth mindset, and there's not a finished product, that there's learning that happens during the process too.
Yeah, well said. Well, and even though we've talked about some of these things as, avoiding the negative things about feedback, the great thing about this book and this chapter is that they offer strategies to defeat those. So as we start looking at some of these strategies, this one actually, I think there were 6 or 7 strategies in this chapter. And I don't know that we have to look at all of them, but feel free to hop in and highlight any that you thought were important. I'll start with strategy 1 because I thought it was a really important point, that it's one thing to ask for feedback, and I think there's some value to open-ended feedback, but a little bit of scaffolding of the feedback really might help you get somewhere in the conversation with your students about what they need and what you're providing as a teacher. And so the one that they offered there was, it would be cool if, just dropping that in there and seeing what you get about an activity or a session or a rotation or whatever it might be that you're wanting some feedback on. So I thought that was an interesting way to say that. Nothing wrong with open-ended feedback. And I don't ever want to control the feedback that I'm getting to make it, more positive than it should be. But I thought that was a nice way of sliding that in. Yeah,
I liked that too. And that phrase could be used with any age level, right? From your youngest learners to adult learners. I liked the example that they gave, that it spun the feedback from just a complaint to a positive, like, hey, here's a possible solution too. Yeah, I like that example too.
I agree. Yeah, that's helpful. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the next strategy I really enjoyed thinking about, like the idea of the peer feedback and the choices that that we often ask kids to try to respond to things, help out a classmate, and I think sometimes there is not a lot of structure there, and kids don't necessarily, or students or even adult learners don't know exactly what they're looking for, because they're not the presenter or they're not the teacher in the room. So I really liked how offering up those different kind of their own peer feedback choice board was really powerful to see, and a great resource that they provide in the book to really break it down. You could take that. I thought, wow, I could just take that exact resource and use it in a class and have students reflecting on different parts and allowing them to choose how they respond versus looking for kind of all the little details. And I know they talk about the rubrics and things, but I found this to be a much better tool that allows the students to have that kind of free choice, much better strategy for them to kind of explore and help out their classmates.
Yeah, I noted as I was reading that, to me, it was just continued scaffolding. You're just providing some guardrails for kids. And I love the phrases that they use. Like if you give a student, they've just watched a peer's presentation or project or whatever it might be, and you ask them for the greatest strength or tiny tweaks. Mm-hmm. I love the way they phrase that. Or celebrate a surprise, or tell us what you're hungry for more on. Where was it lacking, or maybe you wanted some more information. Mind blown or clarifying confusion. I loved all of those phrases that they offered as ways to scaffold that student feedback or that peer-to-peer feedback.
Yeah. And just a few sentence stems to get them started, using some of those examples will allow for any age level to be able to use some of those same types of feedback protocols. What was the next one? Strategy 4, I liked because I've used this example with some of my teachers, the real-time feedback, even using like mastery paths or Google Forms, like the conditional formatting. Is that what I'm thinking of? I was trying to think of the word for it today when I was adding my notes, and I was like, I think it's like conditional formatting, where you can say, you know, based on their answer, send them to this resource, or send them to, you know, maybe me re-explaining how to do the problem, but building into our Canvas quizzes or a mastery path in Canvas, or even into the Google form, some feedback for students in the moment while they're working through some of those things.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you talk too that it doesn't have to be like meeting with you. Like you can build in those ways where it can send them to different resources. And it could be a video you've created, but it also can be another type of resource, and maybe back to a notes page, or, you know, another video, or there's all types of ways that we can kind of reinforce and help them get that feedback in a way. So yeah, I like that, you know, those pieces of technology allow us to do that for sure. I found this strategy, you know, as someone who has tried to disrupt the kind of flow of my classroom, to be challenging sometimes, like moving from like traditional settings to a more kind of flipped or blended learning. You know, sometimes when you haven't seen it in person, it's hard to imagine, like, how do I kind of flip the entire classroom experience where I'm allowing myself to be more present for that feedback in class. So, you know, I don't know if there's any insights either of you have with teachers in your district, but I know sometimes it can be difficult because I don't get to see other classrooms sometimes, or don't get to be out and among, you know, teachers who are able to do that. But I really like this idea of getting that real-time feedback, but just structuring the classroom sometimes can be difficult, especially if you haven't seen that.
Yeah, I love that they added in the idea of building it as a station rotation spot. I thought that was kind of unique. And so, you know, earlier we all talked about those papers that we take home. Well, let's not take them home. Let's go ahead and reflect on that right now in this station as you come by to see me, whether it's every day or every other day, depending on how you set up your station rotations. But it creates that space for students to ask questions if they're unsure how to act on the feedback they may have gotten. Let's say we did something early in the class to assess learning or check learning from the day before, and now they're kind of stuck. But if they know they're coming to you in a station and they've got that opportunity, you know, that could be really yield some benefits for you in your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was teaching in 5th grade and we were doing writing, I would usually make myself a schedule. Like, I'm going to stop in, and it was technically, I suppose, like a station rotation, like where I'm going to pull a small group, but I wouldn't physically pull them. I would just make a note to myself, I'm going to meet with these 5 students, and I'm only going to look at one particular part of their writing. You know, maybe we're only going to look at their introduction paragraph, or their, you know, like topic sentence, and provide feedback just on that one thing. Because as soon as you sit down with a student and you say, okay, we're going to look at this, then like everything just starts jumping out at you. So to focus, even to let the students know, hey, we're only going to talk about whatever piece that you're looking at today. You know, meet with a partner, or use Grammarly, or use spell check to look at the other things. But that was something that helped me. I needed to write it down and have a schedule, though. Like, these 5 students Monday, these 5 students are, you know, Tuesday, whatever. Having that schedule helped.
I think it was really important when you said, Nicole, about how like you would tell the students ahead of time, like, this is what I'm looking at, and that way you knew too, like, not to get caught up in all the other things. Like, this is what I have the time for, and
yeah,
I think, you know, they talk about that a little bit too here, but I think that's helpful feedback to hear.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can lump these last 2 strategies, 5 and 6, together. It's really about providing time and asking students to look at feedback, read the feedback, and then reflect on it. And then the 6th one is about leveraging media to help them do that. And I know I'm on the Flip train, formerly Flipgrid now. So audio, video, screen share, it's got all that built in. I'm also in a Canvas district, so we've got the Canvas media recorder built into SpeedGrader, where I, as a teacher, can give feedback. Students can respond. So, but the key to all that is building that time in the school day or in the class period to do that reflection and to read it, to think about it, reflect on it, and respond.
Mm-hmm. I liked there were a couple templates that they shared in this section for strategy 5, and for there was a specific template where there was several questions that students could go through to kind of reflect on the feedback that they've been given. But I really liked the simplified version that they showed for younger learners, where it was just wow. And so the first W was, what did I do well? The O stood for one thing that I want to work on. And then the second W was for, where do I go next? What do I need? How can I apply this feedback? What do I need to fix? So I really liked that idea of just using those 3 simple questions to get students to think about, okay, what can I do better?
Yeah, and to strategy 6 point, leveraging all of the technology pieces out there, whether it's Flip or things like Loom or Canvas, that has been very transformative for me, giving feedback, because it saves me so much time, and I'm doing it in the moment. And in the book they talk about how they can hear my tone of voice, they can hear that I'm not criticizing it, they can tell by the way I'm saying it and see my facial expressions that they're able to kind of reflect, and I even am more mindful of how I'm responding through that kind of video and audio response. So I have really enjoyed that piece as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as we reflect here on chapter 7, one of the questions that the book included was, if you were given an option to receive feedback on your own lesson design as a teacher, written, audio, video, or video with screen recording, what would you choose and why? And then think about how that might also apply to the students that you're teaching and the products that they're creating for you. So that's a great focus for chapter 7. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Adam for hopping in here today. It was good to have you with us. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and you can find this session and all the sessions on a Keep Indiana Learning playlist in the Keep Indiana Learning YouTube channel. So until then, thanks and have a great day.